let's dive right into this, because we are looking at literally the perfect crime of 1329. So picture this. It's the spring of 1329, and there's this one guy standing at the absolute untouchable peak of his power. His name? Cangrande della Scala. He was the brilliant and honestly entirely ruthless warlord of Verona. He had literally just pulled off the unthinkable. He conquered the incredibly wealthy strategic port city of Treviso. So he's effectively unifying all these warring northern Italian city-states under his own single unstoppable rule. He beat his enemies. He is a conqueror absolutely at the top of his game. But 4 days later, he was dead. I mean, it is a staggering drop, right? Going from the absolute pinnacle of absolute power to just a sudden, unexplained demise. On July 18th, he struts into Treviso as a triumphant conqueror. On July 22nd, his life is just over. So you have to ask yourself, how does the most powerful man in Italy just suddenly drop dead in his prime? Now, what's really interesting here is the dramatic juxtaposition between two completely different versions of history. For 675 years, the official story was, well, incredibly mundane. It was basically chalked up to bad water. They said he drank from a bad spring on his journey, got a severe fever, and died a natural medieval death. And you know that happens, right? Life back then was super fragile. But a 2004 forensic discovery absolutely shattered that nearly 7-century-old consensus. Because it wasn't bad luck at all. It was lethal poisoning. We're talking cold-blooded murder. So, to understand why someone would go to such crazy lengths to take him out, we really have to look at his rapid ascent. He was born in 1291 into what was essentially new money in Verona. The Della Scala family, they really had to claw their way to power. They weren't ancient nobility. They were just ruthlessly ambitious. And under Cangrande, that ambition just hit its peak. He unified those warring northern city-states through sheer strategic brilliance and brute force. So by July 18, 1329, he conquers Treviso. And then, bam, 4 days later, that sudden death. He built this unstoppable empire at breakneck speed, which for sure made plenty of really nervous enemies along the way. And what's absolutely crucial to remember is that he wasn't just some brute with a sword. Take a look at this quote from Dante Alighieri. Yes, that Dante. He actually dedicated part of his absolute masterpiece, The Divine Comedy, to Cangrande. He called him a man of genius, a man of vision. Cangrande was a huge patron of the arts. He supported poets, scholars, you name it. So he was culturally powerful, politically unstoppable, and, to everyone around him, seemingly completely untouchable. Section 1. Opening the Tomb, the 2004 investigation. Okay, so fast forward to February 2004, scientists finally decide to disturb his 675-year rest in the Church of Santa Maria Antica in Verona. First step, they exhume the stone sarcophagus. Step 2, they do an autopsy. And guys, here is the incredible part. Because of the dry, cool stone tomb and the specific burial materials, his body had actually naturally mummified. The preservation was exceptional. I mean, his internal organs were entirely intact. They were literally looking at a 675-year-old body that looked like it had been buried maybe 50 years ago. So for step 3, they carefully took samples from his liver and rectum, and they ran the lab tests. And wow, the evidence they found was just completely damning. When they published these results in 2015, the toxicological and palynological, which is just a fancy word for pollen, evidence revealed incredibly toxic concentrations of digoxin and digitoxin in his liver. They actually found digitalis or foxglove pollen in his rectum, right alongside chamomile and black mulberry pollen. And let's be clear, this wasn't some tiny trace amount or an accidental microdose. The sheer concentrations proved that this was a massive, deliberately lethal dose of toxins. Section 2. A beautiful, deadly weapon, profiling foxglove. Let's take a closer look at foxglove, also known as digitalis. If you've ever walked through a wild European garden in the summer, you've probably seen it. It's got these delicate, trumpet-shaped purple or pink flowers. It's really beautiful. But it contains cardiac glycosides. Now, in modern medicine, tiny, super precise amounts of this are actually used to treat certain heart conditions. But in high, completely unregulated doses, no way. It becomes a weapon that fatally disrupts your heart function. It was quite literally the perfect, untraceable, medieval murder weapon, mainly because it was so incredibly common and wildly lethal. The killer chose it for a brilliant, if entirely terrible, reason. Look at this lethal cascade of symptoms.
Once you ingest it, it causes this twisting stomach pain and really severe nausea. Then the cardiac symptoms hit: irregular heartbeat, dangerous arrhythmias, severe chest pain. Your blood pressure drops, massive confusion sets in, and finally, death. And this brilliantly illustrates the terrible genius of this poison. To a medieval doctor, these symptoms looked exactly like severe gastroenteritis, or even just a really bad fever from drinking contaminated water. It flawlessly mimicked a natural disease.
But there was just one tiny problem for our killer. Foxglove is incredibly bitter. So how on earth do you get a paranoid, powerful warlord to drink it? Well, you use the perfect disguise. Remember those other pollen grains they found during the autopsy? Chamomile and black mulberry? The murderer actually slipped the bitter foxglove into a sweet herbal remedy. See, Cangrande had actually contracted a real, but super mild, fever from some bad water while he was on the road. So his trusted physician offers him a soothing herbal decoction to help with this minor illness. Why would he refuse that? He'd drink it right down.
Section 3. The Unsolved Mystery. Who killed Cangrande?
So the method, completely proven by science. But the mastermind behind it all? That's still a mystery. I want to pose this question directly to you. Who actually had the motive to assassinate a warlord like this? Think about it for a second. When a guy is on the very verge of unifying all of northern Italy, and suddenly he is just removed from the board entirely, who benefits from that massive power vacuum? Well, let's look at our prime suspects. First up, the rival city-states. We're talking Venice, Milan, Florence, and even the Papal States. They had been watching his rapid expansion with absolute panic. Honestly, if he had lived another 10 years, he might have rivaled the Pope himself. So their motive is crystal clear: stop him right now and preserve their own power. But then, you have to look closer to home. The inner court members. His own Della Scala family wasn't exactly unified. His death instantly threw Verona into a highly convenient succession crisis. Ambitious cousins, subordinates looking for revenge, or just a power grab, they all massively benefited from the political chaos of his sudden death. The most chilling truth here is that it was an utterly untraceable assassination. A trusted physician almost certainly handed him that fatal cup of disguised herbal medicine. But was the physician acting alone? Was he paid off by Venice? Was he threatened by a cousin? We have absolutely no idea. And why? Because there was no trial, no interrogation, nothing. The physician simply disappeared from the historical record without a single trace, leaving the true mastermind's identity completely in the dark. 675. That is the number of years the murderer bought away with the perfect crime. Whoever actually ordered this hit most likely died of old age, surrounded by wealth and power, completely escaping any kind of justice. And meanwhile, history wrongly recorded Cangrande della Scala, literally one of the greatest military strategists of his era, as just the unlucky victim of a simple fever. The killer completely won. Section 4. Next time, the Medici and the poison that rewrote a dynasty. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to let you know that this wild story of poison and power absolutely does not end in medieval Italy. Actually, lightning struck twice in history. Francesco I and Bianca de' Medici died in the exact same week in 1587. For 400 years, the official story was a tragic double death by malaria. But a 2006 exhumation discovery in Florence absolutely shattered that myth, revealing an orchestrated double murder that completely rewrote the fate of one of Europe's wealthiest royal courts. Which leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought. If a warlord's death in 1329 and a Medici double demise in 1587 were both officially recorded as natural illnesses for centuries until modern forensics finally stepped in, how many other undisputed historical truths are actually just perfect murders, patiently waiting for science to catch up? Think about that for a bit, and I'll see you in the next explainer.